Welcome to the 48th edition of Lifestory, brought to you by the Living Memory Association, based at the Wee Museum of Memory in Leith. Today we're joined by Alistair Bennett, who at 80 years old takes us through a life well lived. He began work at Alloa Co-op at 15 years old and worked his way up to Chief Executive of Borders Co-op over a 40-year career. Back in time we go. Alistair, welcome.
Thank you.
If you don't mind, we're going to go all the way back to the start of your life. But first, if you don't mind revealing your age, can you tell me how old you are and where you were born?
I'm 80-year-old, was born in Stirling.
And can you tell me a little bit about your parents?
My father was an engineer, my mother was a mill worker.
And did you have contact with your grandparents around that time?
Yes.
Would you go and visit their houses, or would they come and take you out, or how would it work?
No, they were elderly. I had to go and visit them, always looking for a sweetie from Granny.
And what are your earliest memories?
Oh, coming from Alloa to Portobello for our holidays. 26 bus from Princess Street after coming up Waverley Steps with the family case for four of us.
And so I know a lot of folk came for the trades holidays for a day trip. So would you stay overnight? Would you be staying for a wee while in Portobello?
Yes, stayed for a week, then sometime came for weekends.
Ah, brilliant. And what are your... I grew up in Portobello, so what are your memories of Porto?
Getting a nail in my foot on the beach. And my mother put me into my younger brother's go chair. So I was peeled around. That's one of my memories. And the second time we were in Portobello, or the third time, I had appendicitis.
Oh, no.
And so I had a problem getting back to Alloa, right into hospital, emergency operation. So that's my memories of Portobello.
Goodness me. So were the shows there at that
Yes,
point?
they were.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
And donkey rides? Would there be donkey rides at that time?
When I was very young, I was scared to go on donkeys. But my mother insisted, and she held me on them.
And do you have brothers and sisters?
One younger brother, 3 years younger than me.
And have you always got on well with him?
Yes, we have really. I suppose we've had our crosses from time to time, but basically, yes, we all got on well.
And looking back to your memories of that house you grew up in, can you, what are your memories of it? What do you remember of it? It's not still in the family, I take it, the house you grew up in?
Oh, no. That's a long time ago. I really left home when I was 18 to go to college.
And that, so just to take you right back, so in that house, can you remember what the front door looked like?
Yes.
Or can you
remember the whole house?
Yeah, so you can walk around it in your mind?
Yes, I can.
Was that a fireplace?
Yes, fireplace and hot water tank via the fire.
And what would your mum cook for you when you were growing up? Were there any favourites, any family favourites?
Oh, macaroni was one of our favourites.
And what was the town like, the surroundings of where you grew up?
Well, it was in the outskirts of Alloa, a little place called Socky, and next to Alloa, of course, which is the main shopping area and biggest town. Where we lived, there was woods and golf courses, plenty of place for us as kids to play, especially in school holidays.
And do you remember your mates from those days? Who were your first pals?
Yes, I do, and I remember some that I didn't like as well.
So what was your favourite thing to do as a wee boy then? Would it be going to the woods? Or
going to the woods, grab the family axe and cut down trees, which we shouldn't have been doing. But we always were dared by other pals. No, it was great fun running around, kept us fit and cheery, and always seemed to have good weather in school holidays in these days.
And what do you remember of the time you spent with your mum and dad? Were they very busy people? Would it be just weekends, or was there much in the way of family time?
Well, just weekends really. Eventually my father could afford a car, and we went away at weekends for a trip into Fife to Aberdour or places like that.
And do you remember any birthday parties growing up?
Yes, one in particular in the hall where my mother worked, Donaldson Brothers. They had a social hall, and we had birthday parties there and Halloween parties. I remember those quite vividly.
You mentioned you had quite a few pals you used to hang about. Was there a particular pal? Who was your earliest best mate? Do you remember? Is there a name would spring to mind?
Yes, Bobby Snadden. Sadly, he died about a year and a half ago.
Oh dear, so did you stay in touch?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, sorry to hear that. And what outdoor games did you play as a child? Were you a sporty kid?
Played football for the school, and latterly took up golf when I was away from the football. Went to the football to watch Alloa Athletic every home game. was keen. I still am. Still follow them.
Yes.
I know they're not a great team, but you're always interested in it. And their chairman has now become chairman of the Scottish Football Association.
Oh, there you go. We had Terry Christie in for one of these shows, actually.
Oh, yes.
On Lifestory, yeah. So
With his duffel coat.
He wasn't wearing his duffel coat, unfortunately, but he was telling us about his time at Alloa and his time at Stenhousemuir.
Yes.
But he was a tremendous manager. Always did.
Oh, he was.
I think he deserved a shot at something slightly bigger than
Yeah,
the
he was
jobs
quite
he got.
successful.
Yeah. And what's been the highlight of your career following Alloa Athletic Football Club then?
In Sportsline.
Yeah.
Oh, not very great highlights. I was never that great at anything.
Was there one? No, sorry. I mean the Alloa as an Alloa fan. Is there a high point to being an Alloa fan? Was there a Challenge Cup or something? Was there?
Yes, well, the Scottish Cup. Remember going to Park to watch them play Partick Thistle and Maryhill. Followed them as far as we could, especially local derby in Stenhousemuir. That was every New Year.
And was there a bit of an edge to that? Was there?
Oh, yeah, I suppose there was. Not quite Rangers Celtic type of thing, but nevertheless, we're all quite keen for our team to win as always.
And were you a part of any youth organisations as a kid?
Boys Brigade.
Did you go away on camps with them?
Yes, we went to one camp in Anstruther and we filled our pally asses with hay at the local farm, put our tents up. There were thunderstorms that night and we all came home next day.
What would you be doing at the BBs? Was there?
Was Life Boys and then BBs, yeah.
Right. And were there a lot of good deeds, a lot of sort of helping people out, or what do you remember of your BB times?
Well, I just remember every week when we went to the BBs, they taught how to march properly and disciplines. And I think it stood me in good stead in later years.
Yeah.
Though my wife now said I walked far too fast. But I think that was because I walk at Boys Brigade speed.
What was the name of your primary school?
Socky.
And do you remember anything about your first day at primary school?
Yes, very much so. Because there was a Miss Sutherland was a teacher and she sat me beside this chap who had a sweater on, knitted, the same as the one my mother knitted for me. 2 Fairell sweaters. His name was Leonard Williamson.
And are they happy memories, those primary school days?
Yes, when you're very young, we played around the playground, all the usual things that kids do. Had my school dinners for years, always loved my school dinners.
And were you a well-behaved boy or a troublemaker?
No, I was well behaved, I have to say. I got the strap in later years when I was in secondary. But
So was there a natural progression from Socky to a local high school? Which one was that?
yes, Fort Braes, it was a new school, junior secondary. And so after 12-year-old went there and it was excellent. I excelled in woodwork and metalwork and maths and algebra. I was always good with figures.
And did you carry on playing for sports teams for the high school?
No, I didn't then.
And what about, did secondary school bring any new friendships?
Oh yes, because there were people from other schools that come around, so you meet up with them, played badminton, met up, just made friends with a lot of different people.
Yeah. And some people don't like to answer this question because of their worrying about getting into trouble with their wives, but do you remember any their earliest romance at secondary school?
No, not really. I had a few nights out with different girls, but nothing serious, nothing for a long time.
Yeah. And you mentioned getting the belt at secondary school. What did you get the belt for?
Well, I was a bit annoyed. It was in the queue for school dinners, and this Mr. Robertson, who was the woodwork teacher, was on duty that day, and he said, "Right, Bennett, you're next to go in." And I said, "Aye," instead of yes. He says, "My room at 2 o'clock." I got the belt for saying aye instead of yes.
Oh, that's terrible.
That's what I thought.
I think we often touch on it in these Life Story podcasts. I think teachers were a bit keener to give the belt, a bit too keen at times
yes,
in those days.
Nellie from Lochgelly, they called the strap. That's where they were all made.
And was it a Tawes then? Was it the one with the split end?
Yes,
or was it just
yes.
Yeah. Terrifying.
Yep.
When did you leave school then?
When I was 15, the day I was 15, I wanted to leave. My pals were a couple of years older than me, earning money. And although I had a Sunday paper job, which I kept doing till I was 19, because it was so lucrative, I couldn't afford to give it up.
How was it so well paid then? What was going on
Tips.
there? Ah, right, okay.
It wasn't well paid as such,
Yeah.
but it was the tips, because on Sunday morning, a lot of people often came out half-dressed and just said, "Just keep that, son."
Yeah. All right, they didn't want to be hanging about waiting for the
Give you
change
half a
with their
crown. There was
PJs
only
on.
1.6 for the papers or something.
Yeah.
And we got 50 pence for the wage was 50 pence for 2.5 hours, but I'd make about £3, £4, £5.
Yeah, not
So I
bad.
couldn't afford to give it up. And I started walking, then latting my bike, then my father's moped, then if it was raining, he would shout down from the bedroom, just take the car today. So deliver Sunday papers by car, by moped, by bike.
I bet there's not many folk who'll be able to say that.
No.
So you left school at 15. What was your first job out of school?
At Alloa Co-op.
So what within the co-op were you doing initially?
Well, first of all, I was looking for a job, and they went to the Youth Employment Officer, which they had in most councils in these days.
Yeah.
He says, I've just had a call from Alloa Co-op looking for an office boy. So, right, you're on. I went for an interview within an hour of that and did a little test, arithmetic and so on and so forth, and got the job.
And for those, well, I think these days people just imagine the co-op as just another shop. But I mean, it's more of an institution, wasn't it? Can you give me the thinking behind the co-op and what it was all about?
Yes, well, in the early 1800s, there were a lot of poor people, and there still is in this day, but especially then, and they were sold adulterated food by private merchant shops. And eventually, a group of 13 people in Rochdale got together and formed a co-op called the Rochdale Pioneers, and they had various democratic rules, and instead of paying money on capital, they paid what they could now call a dividend on purchases. So if you shopped there, you got the profit back eventually, which was well known for years as dividend.
Yeah.
And dividend eventually went, and trading stamps were in its place.
How did your co-op career unfold then from that first job? How did you work your way up?
The first job was doing the messages for the girls in the office. They were looking for a Granny Smith or a cake or whatever. They had to man the telephone. These were all the juniors' jobs.
What sort of era are we in there? What year would that be roughly, that first job?
1958.
What was the co-op like as an organisation to work for?
Well, it was very good because there was excellent wages, not top wages, but there was trade unions involved, and the co-op national. There were over 1,000 co-ops in Britain when I started working. And of course, there were lots of opportunities. And after I'd been doing my junior stint for a year or two, obviously there was education committees. I was persuaded to go to night school, and did bookkeeping and other bits and pieces. And eventually I applied for a scholarship to the Co-op College, which was a management training college in Loughborough.
Right.
And I won a scholarship and spent 9 months there. And came back to work in Alloa Co-op for a short time. And having read co-op papers, saw there were various executive jobs throughout the co-op in Britain that you could apply for. So I applied for an accountant's job at a little co-op in West Lothian called Croft Head in Falthouse. I was there for 2.5 years accountant, and then applied for a larger job in Galashiels as accountant. And from there, I worked with the chief exec for a good number of years, and when he retired, I was offered his job. That was my first chief executive job. And in the borders, there were 7 other co-ops. For a small 100,000 population, the border were 7 co-ops. And as things got tougher for co-ops, eventually I persuaded them to merge with me, not all at the one time. And so we enlarged border co-op. And then Dumfries Co-op, I took them in, and East Lothian Co-op. And East Lothian and Dumfries Co-op, it was amazing. Although they had all the usual co-op shops, they both had over 100 travelling shops by virtue of the country area they traded in. Butchers' vans, grocery shops, you name it. And East Lothian Co-op had a market garden in a farm based in Trinent, where they got their goods to sell in the shops, and the milk for their dairy and so on and so forth. So it was a varied career, really. And eventually, from there, I persuaded an old friend in East Angus, or Broth in particular, to join me as well. So eventually I had all these co-ops. It merged into one, which was very satisfying. It was very profitable. But it carried on until I retired.
And in those early days of working for the co-op, I take it must have been a massive employer throughout Scotland then.
Oh yes, there was thousands of people.
Who was seen as the main competition to the co-op then, for what you were doing? Was there one? Was there any?
Yes, well there was. And of course, what happened to the co-op, unfortunately, after the war, Lord Cohen, as you probably heard of Tesco, started Tesco, stack 'em high and sell it cheap. And that was the beginning of supermarkets. We didn't have supermarkets as such prior to the end of the war, and that grew, and that affected the co-ops throughout, because the co-ops depended on their individual shops. They supplied everything. In fact, there was a friend that sold shop fitting came in to see me one day, and he was from Leith, and he always said I was fed and clad and the family were buried in the co-op. But then what else happened was, as supermarkets sprung up and dividends got less because the competition was hitting the co-op, eventually it just all changed, and supermarkets were built, out of town shopping, it changed, and the co-op were left behind because there'd no capital like Tesco or Morrison's or Sainsbury have, shareholders' capital. If they wanted money for development, they had to borrow it from the bank. So that was very difficult. Though having said that, at one point I borrowed £1 million in Galashiels, and I got so many phone calls from other co-op people saying you'll be out of a job in months. But my new supermarket with car parking, the first in the Borders, was successful, and just went from there.
Oh, brilliant. What a gamble to make, though.
Well, it was a gamble, but it was either that, well, it was a calculated gamble, because what I did was some of the shops that were empty, I rented them out, and the rents paid the interest on my loan.
Yeah.
And then when the supermarket opened, we made a bit more money, because we got most of the trade in Galashiels at that time.
So had you travelled to other bits of Scotland where supermarkets already existed, run by other companies then, before you opened your one?
Yeah, we travelled around to look at them and see, exactly,
Yeah.
so we got things right. We got assistance as well. The CWS, Cooperative Wholesale Society in Manchester, they had specialists that would help you out and tell you how to fit out your shops, and they would do surveys of the area. So there was a lot of help available at a cost.
Yeah.
I used to pay fantastic fees to them, just grudge that. But anyway, at the end of the day, we were successful, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah. And I take it when you were doing those journeys, looking at other places, you must have just realised there was an inevitability. If you didn't do it in the Borders, somebody else would.
Well, that's what happened eventually. I was first, but then the others moved in. Asda, Morrison's, so on and so forth. Not immediately, but it was happening all over Britain.
And does that original co-op building that you borrowed the money for, is that still there?
No, it's not, unfortunately. After I retired, Asda made a bid for it to make a bigger one in the same site and bought up some others. So it's now an Asda site. My supermarket, after 20 years, was demolished. And that's what Asda did. And the same in Trinent. Trinent Co-op had East Lothian Co-op in Trinent had a supermarket in Trinent, and that went to Asda as well. They just dangle so much cash.
Yeah.
It's difficult to refuse.
And so is there much left of the co-op as it was?
Not really, not as it was. In fact, mainly they've gone back to convenience shopping, as Tesco and Sainsbury and Morrison's are all doing as well.
Yeah.
Supermarkets have died a death to some extent. I think with the pandemic, people got used to going back to shopping in their doorstep instead of driving a few miles or whatever to the out-of-town shopping.
Yeah.
And that hit them. I know where I live now in Bruntsfield in Edinburgh that I can do all my shopping by foot.
Yeah. And to return to those kind of early days of the co-op, when you joined, was there a kind of expectation that there would be training and then you would rise up? You know, was that just part of joining the co-op, that there was a pathway to...
Oh, there was a pathway for training. Yes, no doubt about that.
Yeah, and all those college courses, and that was all paid for by the co-op?
Yes, yes.
And we'll maybe answer this to some extent, but in what ways did the cooperative movement serve its local community?
Well, it served it very well because they supplied absolutely everything that a family could want, obviously from groceries to butchery to fish, bakery and so on and so forth, and the dividend. The dividend was very important. In Alloa, where I worked, they had a dividend when I started it, 1 shilling and threepence. And the local one in the village where I lived, which is only 3 miles away, paid a dividend of 1 in 9.
Yes.
And so there was always competition between co-ops, and unfortunately they kept trying to keep everybody happy with paying all their profits out in dividend and not ploughing enough money back for developments.
Yeah.
And that was a basic problem with the whole co-op in Britain. There's still a few very strong co-ops left. Lincolnshire in particular, one of the best in Britain, still very strong. But they've mostly reverted to small convenience shops now rather than supermarkets. And they're successful at it.
Yeah. I think that answers my next question of how did the organisation change over the decades. I suppose it's just got smaller, isn't it, as the competition rose?
Yes, it's got smaller and doesn't pay a dividend, but now most of the co-op shops pay an indirect dividend if you purchase a co-op product. You get a dividend card. For instance, the other day I got an email saying, Alistair, you've £6.3 to spend. And I didn't realise I had that. It's because I'd spent some money in a few co-ops and bought co-op products.
Yeah, right, okay.
In particular, and they give you a dividend. So I've made £6 without knowing. So it's modernised. It's just quite different now.
So what age were you when you retired, Alistair?
55.
And was that always the plan? Were you always planning to... Because for those days, that would be quite an early retirement, would it?
Well, it was. I had done 40 years and been successful as a chief executive. And my father died at 55, and all his other three brothers all died young. So I thought, right, the good pension funds in the co-op, that was one good advantage. So I thought, right, I'm going to go before anything happens to me. But here I am sitting here at age 80, and probably ruined the pension fund.
A lot of people find it incredibly difficult when they've worked so hard all their life and then suddenly it's gone. Did you take on voluntary roles, or how did you spend your retirement initially?
Playing golf at the main.
Has that remained the same? Did you?
Well, still golf yet, but very little. We have a static caravan down in Kirkcudbright way, and my wife and I play there with another couple, but not as much as I used to play.
Yeah. So, how have you filled your retirement apart from the golf and the caravan? Is there anything? Got any other interests that have come into your life later on?
Well, grandchildren. There's always something to do with the grandchildren. In fact, one of them, who's now 21, I brought her in a carry-cot to Britannia.
Yeah.
And that's one of my early memories with the grandchildren. I still mention that to her every time I see her. But with grandchildren, there's always plenty to do.
Yeah, and I bet that feels like the blink of an eye away as well, doesn't it?
That's right. That's right.
And also the role, you'll have seen this yourself, the role of a grandparent has changed, into all action grandparents now. You have to be taking them out, doing this, stepping up a lot more.
You've got it in one.
I think it used to just be a visit on a Sunday, and that would be it. But not anymore.
Birthdays, whatever.
Yeah. So let's go back a bit to the family life, Alistair. Where did you meet your wife a bit?
Well, when I merged East Lothian Co-op, the then chief executive, who was retiring, introduced me to his co-op society lawyer, and that's where I met my wife, Sally.
And where was the first date, Alistair?
It was a Writers to the Signet dinner in the Signet Library in Edinburgh. No kids.
You've no kids, right?
But there's plenty of grandchildren.
Yeah. And what are they called, your grandchildren? Let's give them a wee mention, if you can remember their names.
Oh, yes. Ellie and Robin, two girls. Stella's another one from the other family. Angus, Harvey, Donnie. That's right.
That'll be an expensive Christmas, Alistair.
Oh, it is, and birthdays.
Goodness me.
Good job I've still got a pension.
And you're looking very well in 80, I have to say. Have you got any dreams or hopes or things that you've not done yet in your life that you'd like to do?
Not really. We've done a lot of holidaying over the years, and we're going off on a cruise in 2 days' time.
Oh, brilliant.
To the Greek islands.
Oh, very nice.
So holidaying plus a static caravan we have in the southwest of Scotland. My wife and I are down there quite often and play golf.
Sounds like you're spending your retirement just right.
Oh, yes.
And you've done a lot of travelling, so have you got any favourite holiday memories? Are there any particular holidays that stick out?
Not really. They've all been enjoyable. We went to Tenerife every February, which stopped. We've been going for 7 years to the same hotel, which was excellent. But the pandemic put an end to that. So this is our first real holiday, this cruise, since then.
And cruise ships have changed a lot, haven't they? They seem to provide almost everything you could possibly hope for or dream of on a holiday.
Well, it's a private family cruise we're going on.
Oh, right, okay.
Rented this cruise ship.
Oh, you've rented a cruise? That sounds very grand.
Yeah. Well, between the big family, there's 17 of us, so.
Yeah. Ah, great. So I take it you don't have to drive it yourself, Alistair?
No.
You just relax.
There's a captain, a chef, and so on and so forth.
Very nice indeed. And looking back, Alistair, any regrets?
None at all.
Any other grand adventures that we've missed out after leaving school? Is there anything else that happened?
No, not really. I was always very involved in my business.
Yeah.
It wasn't a 40-hour week. When you was thinking and looking at other supermarkets to see what you could learn, what you could improve, and so on and so forth. So I had a hectic business life, really, but I thoroughly enjoyed every minute of it.
Yeah, well, that was going to be my next question, because obviously there were stresses and pressures, but you sound like it's something that you enjoyed as a challenge.
Well, I did enjoy it. I suppose there was stress, but I never ever felt really stressed. I had some worries from time to time, but I've never basically been a worrier. I always had my father's theory, sleep on it. So if I had a problem, even was doing balance sheets and it didn't balance, I thought, right, I'll wait to bed, work out first thing in the morning, and it did.
Yeah.
So, no, I had an enjoyable business career, no regrets about it at all, and when the final salary pension scheme, so what more could I ask for?
And did you miss it when you first retired?
Yeah, in some ways, but I thought, well, I've given the co-op my life, really, 40 years.
Yeah.
And the last 20 were quite hectic.
Yeah.
So no regrets. I thought I deserved a bit of retirement, and I've thoroughly enjoyed that so far.
And proudest achievements of your life?
Well, at the time building the supermarket in Galashiels and borrowing the money, which was really unheard of in the co-op. And so that was it's not a big achievement looking back.
Yeah.
Because things like that did start to happen.
Yeah.
But it was a big achievement for a small border town at the time.
Yeah.
And I got David Steele to open it.
Yeah.
He was the local MP.
Well, I think it's a bold life adventure to do anything that people haven't really done before. You know. I think
that's right. I got a lot of criticism and said that it wouldn't work and I'd be out of a job and so on and so forth. But it did work, and I was still in a job.
It's a wonderful feeling proving people wrong as well, isn't it?
Well, that's right.
That's about us. Thank you so much for your time, Alistair.
Thank you.
It was Alistair Bennett was with us today on Lifestory. Thank you very much. If you have a story to share, please pop in to see us at the Wee Museum of Memory on the second floor of Ocean Terminal in Leith. You can also visit our Facebook page to keep up with our regular events and view our wonderful photo videos and much more on our YouTube channel just by searching for the Living Memory Association. We also have a brilliant website at www.livingmemory.org.uk hosting over 3,000 photos in conjunction with Edinburgh Collected. If you've enjoyed this podcast, our further reminiscence and music shows Lifestory, Leith Lives, Forgotten Songs from the Broom Cupboard, and Analogue Rory's Jukebox can all be accessed from the Projects tab on our website or via Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Until next time, we bid you farewell.